Reptile keeping is quite an interesting hobby. I mean, if we asked non-reptile keepers to describe us, they would probably just call us weird. Now, there may be some truth to that. We all know of that one weird kind of reptile guy. And if you don't, it's because you're that weird reptile guy or gal. I mean, the expected archetype of a typical reptile keeper is most likely going to be covered in tattoos and piercings. Now, I don't fall into any of those categories because I'm fucking civilized and slightly scared of needles and bright colors. Now, if you're one of the weird ones, don't worry. Embrace it. Be who you are. You are weirder than me, but be who you are. But this whole idea kind of had me thinking, how would I best describe a reptile keeper to someone who is either not in the reptile hobby at all, or somebody who is trying to get into the reptile hobby? How would I describe them to somebody who has no information to go by? You know, maybe give them some insight as to our little world, or the world that they may be in fact joining. This way they can at least see what's at the end of the tunnel. So I thought about it, and I came up with 7 reptile keeper types. And we're going to talk about those in this video. Now, I didn't try and narrow it down any smaller, like to a list of 5, which would make more sense. 7's a bit of an ambiguous random number. But to be completely honest, I came up with this idea about a month ago and just couldn't be bothered to narrow it down because I liked all 7. So, number 1, the Simpleton. Now, hold on. Before you judge, I'm not saying these people are simple-minded. Some of them are, but I'm not saying that about the whole spectrum. Instead, what I'm saying is that this type of keeper does things the easy way. Some may even call it the lazy way. These type of keepers house their reptiles in very, very, very simple setups. That's 3 varies, by the way. That's a lot. Like there's a water bowl, a hide or 2, some substrate. That's it. Very basic, very simple, and very cheap. Now that method is simple, obviously. That's why it's called the Simpleton. It's easy, and it's actually quite genius when you think about it. Especially if you're talking about a reptile like a hognose snake, for example. They don't need much. You know, a water bowl, a couple of hides, and some basic kind of substrate. That's all they really need. Now, don't get me wrong, it's nice to give them more, but they don't require it to live a good life. So basically, any snake kept in a rack is taking the Simpleton approach. It's usually snakes that get put in racks. Lizards are a little bit more complicated with UVB and whatnot. But if you have a snake and it's in a rack, you are a simpleton. And yes, I have exactly 7 snakes in me snake racks, which are behind you currently. So I am classified as a simpleton. So if you've been offended in this simpleton talk, get over it because I'm also one of you. There should be a bond building up between us, if anything. But I will be leaving this simpleton type behind soon. All my animals are going to be housed in these buggers. Next up, the tree hugger. Now that name probably doesn't tell you much, but this type of reptile keeper are those people that are fucking obsessed with bioactive setups. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to shit on it. I'm not trying to shit on bioactive setups. And they are absolutely fantastic and wonderful for the animal that's going within that enclosure. And an animal living in a bioactive setup is well looked after. Fantastic setup for them. My problem is that every time I meet someone who has a bunch of bioactive setups, it's the first or second thing that they bloody well tell me. It's like, hi, I'm Robin, spelled with a Y, by the way. I have all my animals in bioactive setups. I'm better than you. Firstly, Robin, I could care less how your name is spelled, and just because you've put in the effort to make all your enclosures bioactive does not make you better than me. More passionate, less lazy, and probably wealthier, I'll go with, but not better. I'm really exposing my insecurities in this one, aren't I? Bioactive enclosures are great. Fantastic. Love them. And I would like to get into doing some bioactive setups for some of my animals. But some people are fucking obsessed with the idea and only house their animals in bioactive setups. So if that is you, or I'd say 50% of what you own is in bioactive enclosures, you are this type of reptile keeper. You're a tree hugger. Now don't be offended by this. Embrace it. Own it. Tell everybody you meet that you bloody well do it. And let's be honest, you all do anyway. Because it's literally the first thing and the only thing you buggers ever talk about. So the third type of keeper is the influencer. Now this is a rare type of reptile keeper, and they come in all shapes and sizes. Now in case you haven't guessed at this point, most reptile keepers fall into more than just one category. So you could totally be a tree-hugging influencer. If you are, then I assume all of your content is based around bioactive enclosures and telling people that you're better than them. Because let's be honest, you've got fuck all else going on in your life, and you're as dry as a pensioner's crotch. But the influencer is a bit of an odd category. At first, I did not really know if I should include this as a category, and when I decided to include it, I didn't really know how to explain it. But then luckily for everybody watching, I remembered that I'm a movie buff. So, I'm going to use this as an example. Stay with me. The 1994 movie The Mask with Jim Carrey. Yes, I know this is quite a big segue, and you guys aren't interested in movies. I have a video to prove that. But just let me get to the point here. In that movie, whoever puts on the mask changes. The type of change they go through is dependent on their natural personality and persona. Influencers are no different. Just imagine that the influencer's mask is either YouTube or the camera itself. So if you're a respected professor at a university teaching biology with a loving and kind personality that people are attracted to, you turn into Clint's Reptiles, one of the most insightful and charming YouTube channels out there. If you're a lonely twat with an attitude problem and have the vocabulary of a swear jar, you become, well, this. It might be time for a rebrand. Number 4, the old schooler. You could even call these people reptile whisperers, so whichever one you prefer. In most cases, these are the keepers from back when it all started. The original keepers, the daddies of the reptile industry. If you've been keeping reptiles for 30, 40 years, you're one of the old schoolers. Now, these people, without a doubt, have the most experience and knowledge. And yes, that is a flex, and I do respect your influence on the industry. But just like your grandparents, they love to talk about how good it was back in their day and how we've all fucked up the industry. Like, they had to walk uphill to get to the reptile store, and then they had to walk uphill again to get home from the reptile store. We just slide down to the reptile store and then slide down even further to get back home. Our lives are easy, or at least they like to tell us that relentlessly. They also like to tell us that they've forgotten more about reptiles than we know, which is absolute bullshit because I've got Google in my corner, motherfucker, and most of you can't even connect your Bluetooth printer to your phone. Like, honestly, have you turned Bluetooth on? No? Oh, well, let's try that. Great, we've done that part. Now let's go over to the printer. Why the fuck is it not plugged in? I mean, at least I never had to make eye contact with the cashier at 7-Eleven when I was buying my magazines as a teenager. There are websites that can give me that stuff now without all those awkward interactions. And don't worry, I understand all that awkwardness you guys would have felt. It's similar to when I go to the store to buy condoms. And yes, I said condoms, not condoms. But every time you go into that store to buy some, it's a bloody woman at the cashier and she always keeps them behind the fucking desk. So you have to make eye contact with this woman and ask her for them. And then she has the audacity to ask what size you need. Like, for fuck's sakes, bitch, just give me the smalls. So back to the old schoolers. I'm getting off topic quite a bit during this video. But they seem to think that they have some kind of special connection with all of their pets. Like, they have an intuition that we're just never gonna get. You know, they have a unique bond. And that bond, guys, only comes from having way too much reptile connection and not enough motherly attention. Now, to be honest, I'm shitting on the old schoolers, but they don't really bother me because they're going to be dead in 20 to 30 years from now anyway. Fuck it, hell, Matt, keep it light. Now, I don't actually mean that, obviously, but time is running out, you old bastards. All jokes aside, I have a couple of old schoolers or reptile whisperers in my corner that I go to for every question I have. They are a requirement in the reptile hobby. You need those people. So as much as I'm making fun of them, they are essential. You do need them. You need those people with all that kind of information and data. Now, I'm not that worried about receiving a bunch of hate from the old schoolers because they're the generation that can actually take a joke, unlike today. And in fairness, if they can't take the joke, they're going to be dead soon anyway. Number 5. We had to get out of that last entry because I felt like I was just digging myself a hole. We're going to dig ourselves a new hole now, just beside that big one. Now, number 5 here is called the Daredevils. I did want to call it the Death Row Inmates, or Death Row, but decided against that. So I'm sure you can guess what kind of keepers these are, just based on those names. But the types of keeper that fit into this category are the ones that free handle venomous stuff, or the ones that handle big bitey things. So we're going to keep it the Daredevils. The original's always the best anyway. Well, I guess the original isn't always the best. The Second World War was definitely better than the first. Now, I've spoken about venomous handling in some of my previous videos, and in fairness, it's just not really for me. I like being alive. Like free handling anyway, you know, not using a hook, not using gloves, not having a hospital in the background, Bear Grylls style, but putting myself into the danger zone. There's no fucking chance of me doing that. I like being alive. Now, to all those people out there that do free handle, I'm not shitting on you. I'm not trying to dig at you. It's your prerogative, you do whatever you want. I'm more just trying to acknowledge it, and this is just kind of the method that I take. Listen, I insulted myself with the snake racks. You were bound to get something. But if we're honest, you're miles braver than I am. Your balls touch the floor. I'm a massive coward, and I respect you through and through. As long as you're alive, I will anyway. But you are a unique breed. We do have to point that out. And most people realistically shouldn't be free handling. It's not something that should be widespread We need some people to do it. Yes, we need to display these animals. So you do it, but let me have a category to describe you. And you're called the Daredevils. In brackets beside it, though, we're going to have Death Row. Now, fortunately, this is the smallest group of people within this list of different reptile keeper types. Someone needs to do it. I'm just glad it's not me. Number 6. The Coward. This is going to be a bit of a contrast to the one that we just did. Might have made more sense and been wise to put this somewhere else in the list and not directly after the previous one. But I've numbered all of them and I've filmed the first 5. I ain't about to do this again. Right, so the Coward. We all kind of fit into this category, at least at some point within our reptile keeping journey. And yes, it's a journey, kind of like a video game journey. You start out with your character with basically nothing, just a loincloth. And then when you finish the game, you know, better weapons, better armor, better stuff, or whatever. I'm not much of a gamer, so not the greatest analogy for me to use. So I don't really know how to expand on this analogy anymore, or how to make much sense of it. I think we'll just leave this one here. Right, so I said this category pretty much encapsulates everybody to a certain degree. So let me explain what that means. The Coward is someone that keeps animals that they are scared of in some way. So this is primarily going to be made up of new keepers, or keepers that have just obtained an animal that they're not very familiar with. Like when I first got a Texas rat snake, like they were just piss and vinegar filled sock puppets. They're not known for being the most friendly of animals, and I struggled with picking her up with confidence. I'd be going in, oop, back out, going in, oop, back out. It took a while to get over that kind of initial fear. So during that period of time, I was a bit of a coward when it came to handling her, because I can go pick up a hognose snake, no problem. But a Texas rat snake at that time, I was a little edgy with. Now, you're not always going to be a coward. Like now, Texas rat snakes, I could care less. I'm just so desensitized to them. You just open them in, yeah, whatever, you're pissed, pick him up, he's fine. But over time, with practice and experience, you kind of get desensitized to that fear, and you also kind of learn the animal. So you progress out of the coward type for that animal. Now, don't feel bad if you are currently experiencing this type of reptile keeping. We've all been there. And also, I'm not saying you're actually scared of this animal. I'm just saying that you lack the experience and the confidence with the animal. But it will build up in time. Because fear is just a part of new experiences. Confidence comes with time. Now, if you're someone watching this and you're claiming that you've never felt fear with any animal you've handled, you're lying to yourself. And if you're not lying to yourself, we may need to start another category for you. We could call it the androids or something. No, I don't like that. The androids is actually kind of a cool name. I'm trying to insult you, not build you up. I think we're going to call you something less cool. We'll call you the numbers. So the final type of keeper here, the collector. This one's pretty self-explanatory, I think. We could just end the video here, but I will go into detail and explain what this is. So this type of reptile keeper encapsulates pretty much all of us, right? I mean, can you name anyone that has just one pet reptile? I'm going to save you the trouble of thinking. Those people don't exist. You either have no reptiles or you have many reptiles. If you meet anybody who claims to have just one, or you yourself are claiming to have just one, you're not real. You're like birds. Reptile keeping is an addiction. Once you get one, it's just a rabbit hole to get more. And even if you do go down to one reptile one day, it's inevitable that you're going to relapse and eventually just get back up to 3, 4, 5, 6, 50. And trust me, no amount of rehab is going to help you with that. Don't be a quitter. Once an addict, always an addict. Now that may sound a little bit insensitive, but I have a friend who's been to rehab a number of times. He's currently in rehab now, actually. This is all jokes, just funny. Nothing personal. And anyway, I did ask my friend for permission to use this joke, like if he felt like it was insensitive or at bad taste. And he said he was totally fine with the entire joke, and he just laughed his head off. He did have a rubber band wrapped around his arm, though. So those are the 7 type of reptile keepers. The Simpleton, the Tree Hugger, the Influencer, the Old Schooler, the Daredevil, the Cowards, and the Collector. We all fall into one or more of these categories throughout our time keeping reptiles and even currently while we keep our reptiles. For example, I fall into the Simpleton category because I keep some of my snakes in snake racks. I fall into the Influencer category even though I'm miniature, and I also fall within the Collector because I have 17 current animals in my care. And I would never have less than one animal because those people don't exist. They're not real. They are like birds. But I've also fallen into some of the other categories before. Like the Coward, I've definitely been in that category a couple of times. And one day, I aspire to be one of the Old Schoolers. Let me know in the comments below which categories you fall into.